there's something wrong. And so it's not easy to say, well, I didn't get this part because of homophobia or because I played a gay character. You don't always really know. And that's the awful, elusive thing about it.
There's so much crappy, sort of racist, sexist, homophobic conditioning that is there without people even knowing it. It's a war. It's a war doing culture in America in which you're not trying to affirm a European aesthetic is war. That's it.
Industry people, casting directors, producers, and people that are gatekeepers don't necessarily understand or appreciate that aspiration of diversity or the artist's ability or wish to be those many things. So those gatekeepers don't always understand, oh wow, that gayness or that issue of playing a gay person is just part of a wonderful spectrum of work.
This play will go a long way towards sort of letting people see the variety and the richness of people who happen to be Asian American, who happen to be gay.
And so this institution, the public, is really about celebrating differences and celebrating the specifics of everybody's story and not being apologetic about it, or not being, I sneaked that one in. You know, as long as I'm here, there will be gay plays, there will be Asian plays, there will be black plays, there will be white plays, there will be a few European things going on. You know, there will be all of it here because we're all a part of it.
In the...
Hi, I'm Maria Magenti, and you're watching In the Life.
Still ahead on this edition of In the Life, we'll have clips from a heartwarming movie and 2 powerful documentaries you won't want to miss. And we'll preview a new opera based on the life of a true veteran of the lesbian and gay rights movement, Harvey Milk. But first, when you think of the most visible lesbians of our day, who comes to mind? Melissa? Martina? Fair enough. Yet in the war against AIDS, thousands of lesbians have been there from the beginning, helping their brothers through the early stages of the epidemic. Then, when it became clear that women too were dying from AIDS, fighting to get the services they deserved. Tonight, we'll look at both, the celebrities and the rarely recognized women whose contributions matter just as much.
Get the facts. Lesbians are living with AIDS. We are not immune.
Act up! Fight back! Fight AIDS! Act up! Fight back!
What's significant, I think, is that lesbians have been getting AIDS since the beginning of the epidemic. We just haven't been categorized as lesbians.
People need to understand beforehand that lesbians are women and that we are just as much exposed and at risk as any other woman.
Well, lesbians that are HIV infected reflect the general population of women who are HIV infected. They are primarily poor, urban-dwelling women of color who live in communities where drugs are available and it's not uncommon for them or their associates to use IV drugs.
That doesn't mean that women that have more buffer, more middle-class women, aren't at risk also, but it means that it takes longer. It just takes longer. That's all that's true about a virus. It enters populations that are most vulnerable.
Well, the vast majority of women who are lesbians who are HIV infected are tremendously isolated from the lesbian community. In fact, women who are HIV infected very frequently have a multitude of identities to have to cope with in terms of looking for services and looking for support. Being a lesbian with HIV, being a lesbian who has shot drugs, being a lesbian who may have had a past of exchanging sex for drugs or money, puts that lesbian, that woman who has sex with women, in a very isolated, very insecure position.
To do lesbian HIV issues means to be committed to a struggle around racism and a struggle around class difference. It means that not because it's rhetorical, but because African American women get a different kind of health care than white middle class women. And if you can't take that on, you can't take on HIV.
Women with AIDS under attack! What do we do?
Ironically, even though we didn't start doing lesbian HIV work, or I didn't start it because of numbers, what we're finding is that in any study where women partner with women, they're either more likely to be involved in risky activities or more likely to be HIV positive. And it turns out that it looks like it's a marker when we can't figure anything else out about women to indicate that that's a really risky category of women, even though we don't understand it.
I think that for most people, the idea of a lesbian having HIV infection is an idea that's not entertained or thought of or considered important. I think that women are getting short shrift in terms of treatment, in terms of research, and lesbians are totally at the bottom of the barrel.
One of the issues is being able to empower these women to be out about their sexuality and about their status. And it's hard, it's very hard to fight for visibility when there are so many women scared to be out.
I think it's really important for us to recognize that lesbian AIDS activists have been a very important part of the AIDS activist movement. And we need to acknowledge that, and those of us who have done that work need to understand that that's been very important work. But I think because women tend to ignore ourselves, we've ignored the lesbian community in a way that we can no longer afford to do.
In Los Angeles, it was hard to ignore. Celebrities gathered to raise money for women's health services.
Have you ever seen so many famous lesbians in one room?
Lesbians?
Martina Navratilova and Melissa Etheridge were the top honorees in Los Angeles for Women's Night, an annual tribute to outstanding lesbian and bisexual women. Navratilova was given the Community Role Model Award and proved she still has great form when it comes to shrugging off all those tabloid tales.
According to everything that's been written about me, I probably have slept with about half of you that are here. But as you know, it's not true. In fact, I don't have one ex-girlfriend in this room, and who here can say that?
There was more praise for the tennis pro from the lesbian laureate. Etheridge hailed Navratilova as her personal role model.
When I decided to come out, she was very much that sort of role model for me, and I was very excited to finally meet her and become her friend. It's meant a lot to me.
Navratilova responded that she gladly takes on the title of role model, especially when certain other athletes pointedly turn it down.
I think most people that are put in that position, athletes particularly, get paid enough to suffer the consequences of being a role model. And we can behave ourselves and be true to ourselves and practice what we preach and live our own truth and make sure that our actions and words match. I don't think it's too much to ask for.
This year's event raised $250,000 for the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Community Services Center, the oldest and largest gay and lesbian organization in the world. Back at the party, the crowd couldn't have asked for a better evening. Etheridge was handed the Creative Integrity Award.
Let's do that pyramid we all practiced.
And 7 local lesbian and bisexual women were honored by LACE, Lesbians Active in Community Empowerment. They didn't have to say this was one of the most significant events of the year. You could already tell that from their faces.
I think it helps validate women. It gives them a place to come and feel safe and to feel validated for what they do and for who they are and all of what they are. I think that's one of the key, most important things about this event.
This is Bill Britt reporting for In the Life in Los Angeles.
This May in Washington, thousands of women will join in the first ever Mothers March Against AIDS. 2 of those women have just completed a remarkable documentary, a film that was begun by one of their sons, a film they finished after his death. It's called Tuesday Night, and it's about 2 support groups for mothers of grown children with HIV and AIDS. Both groups meet at the same time in the same building. Upstairs, for those whose children have died. Downstairs, for those whose children have not.
The downstairs group lives with hope, and the focus is on the child and what they can do to help their child. The upstairs group has lost that hope, and they need to deal with their own feelings about the loss. So the focus of the 2 groups is completely different, and the needs of the people in the group are different, and they cannot be addressed in the same group. In December of 1989, my son Adam Balzano told me he was HIV positive. I was devastated. I knew I needed help. That is how I came to be a member of the Mother Support Group.
I have lost my child to AIDS, and that AIDS is a very important, not only political, national, but personal issue.
It's like being a veteran.
Right.
I mean, it was like being a veteran of the war of AIDS.
We are veterans.
We are
exactly.
veterans. And those veterans stay together because they've had this war experience.
The same experience.
They've had the same experience. They know how it was to be in the trenches.
One of the most important things that the group gave me during my child's illness was a place where I could come and say anything.
I walked into the group in a state of total terror and fear, and we held hands, and I found myself closing my eyes and crying, and everybody was very silent. They had all been through this, but this was my first time. And then Dean was there, and she was talking about her son who was very sick. And I said, "What's wrong with your son? What's happening?" And she said, "He's dying." And I just sat there, and I said, "My God, why aren't we all screaming?"
Our relationship is better than it's ever been. It's more open, it's more honest. But I'm petrified. Because as good as it is, I'm afraid of when I'm not going to have it. And it scares the hell out of me. And I wish that there was something I could do to stop it.
Everybody wishes
To just put a hold on it.
I don't know, I could be sitting in an executive meeting, and from nowhere comes the thought, I'm sitting here making decisions about this company, and somewhere my son may be dying. You know, it's like, you know, excuse me, what did you say?
Even the phone scares you. When I'm at work, the phone scares me. Who's gonna call me and tell me what happens next?
My heart is breaking.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I can feel it emotionally and psychologically. I almost feel it physically, that my heart is breaking. And I could give up some of, you know, positive stuff that we talk about, if I could give up the prospect of losing my son and not having him in my life.
And I get scared, really scared. I get scared. And I don't want to go upstairs again. I don't ever want to go. So, it's scary. I can understand how she feels. I don't want to lose him either. I want to go first. Mother's supposed to go first.
Mother's supposed to go first.
It's the gay community that helped my daughter and I when she first got diagnosed. And I'll do anything in the world for the gay community because they helped us and no one else in the world did.
Mothers who have children that are HIV positive or that have AIDS, they're not alone. There are other mothers and other women out there who are there for them, who can help them.
For our next documentary clip, we revisit the issue of veterans of military service. Earlier, we spoke with Alan Barabay. Now Arthur Dong has turned Coming Out Under Fire into a film.
I still have problems today with the military and what it stands for, especially with third world countries. But what the issue really means for me is that it was a clear example of the violation of human rights. And that for me was very important. That despite whatever political leanings I may have or whatever personal feelings I have about the military machine, the fact is that our government treats a class of citizens this way was not right. And I wanted to let a larger audience know about it.
dual psychiatric examination of applicants for voluntary enlistment and selectees for induction. The Surgeon General desires that